Good morning. It's Monday, May the 31st, Memorial Day, and I hope you're having a memorable Memorial Day. And this is the drill. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. My name is Ron, and I'm the only true conservative in the United States today. So this morning we're going to do the declaration for spiritual warfare, then the Pledge of Allegiance, and then the national anthem. All that when I come back. Thank you. I will remove violence from your land. I will rescue you from evildoers and will protect you from the violent who devise evil plans in their hearts and stir up war every day. I will remove those from your land whose deeds are evil and whose hands are filled with acts of violence. They pursue evil schemes and acts of violence mark their ways. The way of peace they do not know. There is no justice in their paths. No one who walks along with them will know peace. But if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and I will forgive their sin and heal their land. Prayer declaration. Father, deliver me from violent and bloodthirsty men. In the name of Jesus, I bind all fear and panic that would come through terrorism. I cut the acts of violence out of the hands of the wicked. Let the assemblies of violent men be exposed and cut off. Let violence be no more in my borders. Call your people to humble themselves and call upon you, and come and forgive our sin and heal our land. And that was the daily declaration for spiritual warfare, and now the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, and now the Star-Spangled Banner. So that is absolutely gorgeous, and I like the daily declaration for spiritual warfare to remind us that what we're about here, being conservatives, is serious, and it's ultimately about good and evil. And today's declaration, by the way, really reminds me of the situation in Israel and the Hamas, not the Palestinians. As far as I'm concerned, there are no Palestinians, just the Israelis and Hamas. So it's very relevant and a good reminder for true conservatives that this is deep. This isn't just a matter of who it is that we're electing president or whether or not we have a majority in Congress. It goes much deeper than that. Also, the pledge and Star-Spangled Banner done by children, because I want to communicate the fact that the true conservative still has a sense, a little bit of a sense of innocence and a sense of wonder, despite being an adult, and that we want to keep that. The left wants to convince you that your job is to become jaded, to have seen it all, done it all, been there, got the t-shirt. No. We should always have a certain childlike sense of wonder about things, and the pledge and the Star-Spangled Banner, having children doing that, expresses that very well. Also, the third part of this is consistency. If I'm going to claim to be a conservative, and if I claim that patriotism is a fundamental part of that, and Christianity, being a Christian, is a fundamental part of being a conservative, then I should express that in my podcast. Unlike the broadcasters, the Hugh Hewitts and the Sean Hannitys et al., that don't even offer a prayer, don't even offer up the Pledge of Allegiance. So, another reason for it. So, when I come back, I'm going to be reading from an issue of Imprimis magazine. Thank you. This issue of Imprimis is the January 2021 issue, volume 50, number 1. And the name of the article is Who is in Control? The Need to Rein in Big Tech. The article is written by a man named Alam Bokhari, and he's a senior technology correspondent at Breitbart News. He's a graduate of the University of Oxford and was a 2020 Lincoln Fellow at the Claremont Institute for the Study of Statesmanship and Political Philosophy. In 2018, he obtained and published The Google Tape, a recording of Google's top executives reacting to the 2016 Trump election and declaring their intention to make the American populist movement a blip in history. He's the author of Deleted: Big Tech's Battle to Erase the Trump Movement and Steal the Election. And so this is basically adapted from a speech delivered at Hillsdale College on November 8th, 2020 during a Center for Constructive Alternatives conference on Big Tech. In January, when every major Silicon Valley tech company permanently banned the President of the United States from its platform, there's a backlash around the world. One after another, government and party leaders, many of them ideologically opposed to the policies of President Trump, raised their voices against the power and arrogance of the American tech giants. These included the President of Mexico, the Chancellor of Germany, the government of Poland, ministers in the French and Australian governments, the neoliberal center-right bloc in the European Parliament, the National Populist bloc in the European Parliament, the leader of the Russian opposition, who recently survived an assassination attempt, and the Russian government, which may well have been behind that assassination attempt. Common threats create strange bedfellows: socialists, conservatives, nationalists, neoliberals, autocrats, and anti-autocrats may not agree on much, but they all recognize that the tech giants have accumulated far too much power. None like the idea that a pack of American hipsters in Silicon Valley can, at any moment, cut off their digital lines of communication. I published a book on this topic prior to the November election, and many who called me alarmist then are not so sure of that now. I built the book on interviews with Silicon Valley insiders and 5 years of reporting as a Breitbart News tech correspondent. Breitbart created dedicated tech reporting team in 2015, at a time when few recognized the danger that the rising tide of left-wing hostility to free speech would pose to the vision of the World Wide Web as a free and open platform for all viewpoints. This inversion of that early libertarian ideal, the movement away from freedom of information to the control of information on the web, has been the story the past 5 years. More when I return. Thank you. We return to the article in Imprimis magazine called Who's in Control? The Need to Rein in Big Tech. And the first part of this, the author was talking about how the big tech banning Donald Trump from all of the platforms raised a hue and a cry worldwide. Back to the article. When the web was created in the 1990s, the goal was that everyone who wanted a voice could have one. All a person had to do was access the global marketplace of ideas, was to go online and set up a website. Once created, the website belonged to that person. Especially if the person owned his own server, no one could deplatform him. That was by design, because the web, when it was invented, was competing with other types of online services that were not so free and open. It's important to remember that the web, as we know it today, a network of websites accessed through browsers, was not the first online service ever created. In the 1990s, Sir Timothy Berners-Lee invented the technology that underpins websites and web browsers, creating the web as we know it today. But there were other online services, some of which predated Berners-Lee's invention. Corporations like CompuServe and Prodigy ran their own online networks in the 90s, networks that were separate from the web and had access points that were different from web browsers. These privately owned networks were open to the public, but CompuServe and Prodigy owned every bit of information on them and could kick people off of their networks for any reason. In these ways, the web was different. No one owned the information on it, or kick anyone off. That was the idea, at least, before the web was captured by a handful of corporations. We all know their names: Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Amazon. Like Prodigy and CompuServe back in the 90s, they own everything on their platforms, and they have the police power over what can be said and who can participate. But it matters a lot more today than it did in the 90s. Back then, very few people used online services. Today, everyone uses them. It is practically impossible not to use them. Businesses depend on them. News publishers depend on them. Politicians and political activists depend on them. And crucially, citizens depend on them for information. And I wanted to interject a little something. He's missing something here in his timeline, and that is, it was free and open until the government got involved. The government is the one that started censorship. And the government didn't want to be seen, the people in government didn't want to be seen censoring the internet. So they demanded that the internet censor itself. Because they were alarmed that there was people on Facebook that were terrorists. And they were getting on Facebook, and they had Facebook pages in which they're promoting ISIS, and they're promoting other terrorist organizations and promoting terrorism in the United States and other places in the world. And so the hue and cry went up from Congress, who demanded that Facebook and others censor their content and delete or otherwise punish the people that are creating this offensive conduct or content that's offensive to Congress. And so now that's all fine and dandy when we're banning ISIS, but then when we start banning Americans, then all of a sudden it becomes a problem. So it seems to me that the simplest solution, of course, is to tell Congress to F off. Stay out of it. It's none of your damn business. But because every time the government gets involved in something, it doesn't make it better, it makes it worse. Back to the article. Today, big tech just doesn't mean control over online information. It means control over news. It means control over commerce. It means control over politics. How are corporate tech giants using their control? Judging by the three biggest moves they have made since I wrote the book: the censoring of the New York Post in October when it publishes blockbuster stories on Biden family corruption, the censorship and eventual banning from the web of President Trump, and the coordinated takedown of upstart social media site Parler, it is obvious that big tech's priority today is to support the political left and the Washington establishment. There's some equivalency going on here too, and that helps set this up. And that is, the left has been very, very stealthily saying that terrorism isn't just on Muslim. It's not just a Muslim thing, but that there's such thing as American terrorism. And so once we start getting into that, where we're going to equivocate or do equivalency, moral equivalency, and say that what goes on, violence in the United States is exactly the same as the violence that's going on in Israel, then it's not hard to see how you can then just simply, it's not a big leap to go ahead and censor somebody like Donald Trump by suggesting that he is a terrorist or leading some sort of a terroristic movement. So we have to quit with this moral equivalency crap. The Muslims, the terrorists in the world are Muslim terrorists because they want a worldwide, they want the same thing the left wants, worldwide revolution, except instead of having a secular outcome to that worldwide revolution, they want a religious outcome. They want a Muslim. They're looking for the perfect Islamic planet, the perfect Islamic world, a world in which no one else is welcome, for that matter. So, and they're going to engage in whatever terroristic practices they need to in order to try to get the same the thing that the left is looking for secularly, which is a spontaneous uprising of Muslims to initiate, again, a worldwide Islamic revolution, ushering in Islamic paradise. So quit doing with equivalency. Don't let anybody tell you that there's such thing as American terrorism. Throw the bullshit flag on that one. One of your friends says, "Oh, well, American terrorism, bullshit. There is no American terrorism." I dare you to prove that there's American terrorism. Shut it down. Because once we shut that down, then the left has no excuse. They cannot go ahead and ban Donald Trump and people like Donald Trump. Back to the article. Big tech has become the most powerful election-influencing machine in American history. It's not an exaggeration to say that if the technologies of Silicon Valley are allowed to develop to their fullest extent without any oversight or checks and balances, then we will never have another free and fair election. But the power of big tech goes beyond the manipulation of political behavior. As one of my Facebook sources told me in an interview for my book, we have thousands of people on the platform who have gone from far right to center in the past year, so we can build a model from these people and try to make everyone else on the right follow the same path. Let that sink in. They don't just want to control information or even voting behavior, they want to manipulate people's world view. Excuse me. Is it too much to say that the big tech has prioritized this kind of manipulation? Consider that Twitter is currently facing a lawsuit from a victim of child sexual abuse who says that the company repeatedly failed to take down a video depicting his assault, and that it eventually agreed to do so only after the intervention of an agent from the Department of Homeland Security. So Twitter will take it upon itself to ban the President of the United States, but it's alleged to have taken down child porn only after being prodded by federal law enforcement. Back in a minute. Thank you. Welcome back. And so again, there's the evidence right there that it is the right that actually started all of this censoring stuff. That was the Department of Homeland Security and various conservatives that were saying, hey, you have ISIS on here, you have pornography of various sorts on here. You need to take control and assume responsibility for the content of your websites. And then when they assume control of that content, then the same people come back and start whining and complaining that there's some sort of a conspiracy afoot to keep them and their friends from being able to vote, etc. What should have been happening was not censoring content, but other than to look at the content in terms of potential illegality. If something on the website is being displayed for the purpose of either actively encouraging the overthrow of the government or committing a felony, for instance, then it should be referred to the appropriate agency for appropriate action. And that's it. But that Facebook and whatnot should stay out of it. They don't ban it. They don't, anything like that unless that's part of, let's say, the penalty. Let's say the judge says part of your sentence is that you're not going to be able to be on Facebook anymore. We're saying that you have to quit communicating on Facebook, and so then Facebook could go ahead and the judge will issue an order, and they follow that order. It's called due process of law. That's the problem with what it is that Facebook, Twitter, and others are doing. There's no due process, and that's the difference between free speech and tyranny. So, back to the article. How does big tech go about manipulating our thoughts and behavior? It begins with the fact that these tech companies strive to know everything about us, our likes, our dislikes, the issues we're interested in, the websites we visit, the videos we watch, who we voted for in our party affiliation. If you search for a Hanukkah recipe, then they know you're likely Jewish. If you're running down the Yankees, they'll figure out you're a Red Sox fan. Even if your smartphone is turned off, they'll track your location. They know who you work for, who your friends are, when you're walking your dog, whether you go to the church, when you're standing in line to vote, and on and on. And so none of that really winds me up. I don't care about any of that. I don't care what they know, as long as what they're doing is not illegal. And that means they're violating existing law. I resist the idea of creating new laws to try to illegalize behavior that was before perfectly legal. They want to monitor me by the fact that I buy a cell phone, I buy a smartphone means I don't mind, I don't care. I want them to know where I am because it's called a GPS. A lot of my work is surrounded I use a GPS in my work, so I have to have it. So they're going to be able to know where I am. Anything else is just flat out hypocrisy. We want them to know. I want targeted advertising, by the way. I'm pro-targeted advertising. Seems a little creepy in the beginning, but I like it. I'm sick and tired of seeing ads for things I have absolutely no interest in. Listen to Rush Limbaugh, and he wants to sell me a mattress, or he wants to sell me sheets, or he wants to sell me a new pillow. I don't want any of those things. I don't need any of those things. It's much better if he's going to try and sell me the things that I want and need. How are they going to find that out? By monitoring what websites that I go to in terms of shopping. So, back to the article. As I already mentioned, big tech also monitors how our beliefs and behaviors change over time. Big deal. I'm skipping over to the next paragraph. I mentioned that big tech has recently demonstrated ideological bias, but it's equally true that these companies have huge economic interests at stake in politics. And I want to say that they have not demonstrated any such ideological bias ever. That again, they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are censoring the content. They've been demanded by Congress to censor content. Once Congress goes ahead and does that, then interest groups get involved. So you're going to get pressure from various interest groups that are going to pressure Facebook to declare certain speech, hate speech, certain speech as potentially terroristic, and use that as the basis for which to delete Donald Trump, for instance, because he doesn't mention that in his article. The fact that the reason that they went ahead and did this was because of the situation on January the 6th, and they declared, or somebody did anyways, and put pressure, declared that Donald Trump was, I don't think they used the word terrorist, but that was kind of the general direction they were going in, that he was trying to overthrow the government and whatnot. And so he had to be stopped, that he was a threat to our national security. And so that he had to be stopped. So you get all these interest groups that are going to Facebook, Twitter, etc., and demanding that Donald Trump be taken off the platform. And so they comply. And you may have even had political pressure. Who knows? Nancy Pelosi may have called them up herself and said, hey, if you expect to get any favorable treatment in Congress, you need to make sure he's not on Twitter, Facebook, etc. They want to get Donald Trump off Twitter, the left, get him off Twitter for quite a long time. So, again, really more hypocrisy. I see and know that Twitter and Facebook and those people are basically caught in the middle of a no-win game. Really all they want to do is, again, advertising is how they're going to make their money. They have no really any business interest in chasing Donald Trump or anyone else off the web unless they're, again, criminals. And if they're engaged in criminal activity, then they have a moral mandate to go ahead and get those people off the web. Back to the article. To understand how effective big tech's manipulation could become, consider the feedback loop. As big tech constantly collects data about us, they run tests to see what information has an impact on us. And I'm going to skip this too. I think I may just end up skipping the rest of the article here. Because so what? Of course they're going to find out what kind of an impact it has. They're in the advertising business. And they're getting an opportunity to do something that magazines and newspapers can't do. And that is find out the effectiveness of their advertising. They're going to put in the advertising that's going to have the most effectiveness and leave out the advertising that doesn't. What we do know, back to the article, is that big tech openly manipulates the content people see. We know, for example, that Google reduced the visibility of Breitbart news links in search results by 99% in 2020 compared with the same period in 2016. And Breitbart, again, what came under attack, the reason that they did this is as false news, fake news. We got into the fake news controversy. There was a big deal by the left in this country saying that the American people, the only reason they voted for Donald Trump was that they were brainwashed. They didn't use the word brainwashing, but that's what they were getting at, was brainwashed by false news, by stories that were just absolutely not only wrong, but they were just wildly inaccurate. They had little or no accuracy whatsoever. And that's just not true. What it's trying to do is set up and say that only the news that the left approves of is valid and everything else is invalid. So, back to the article. Speaking of flipping switches, I've noticed that President Trump was collectively banned by Twitter, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, and every other social media platform you can think of. But even before that, there was manipulation going on. Twitter, for instance, reduced engagement on the president's tweets by over 80%. Facebook deleted posts by the president for spreading so-called disinformation. There you go. That's what, again, he and Breitbart News and others were accused of, providing disinformation. And that's what provided them with the excuse to go ahead and kick him off the platform. But even more troubling, I think, are the invisible things these companies do. Consider quality ratings. Over the past several years, however, and one can trace the beginning of the change to Donald Trump's victory in 2016, big tech has introduced all sorts of new criteria into the mix that determines quality scores. Today, the algorithms on Google and Facebook have been trained to detect hate speech, misinformation, and authoritative sources. Algorithms analyze a user's network so that whatever users follow on social media, non-authoritative news outlets, affects the user's quality score. Algorithms also detect the use of language frowned on by big tech. Illegal immigrant, undocumented immigrant. The illegal immigrant's bad and undocumented immigrant is good. And adjust quality scores accordingly. And again, all of this is kind of a big so what. You can what in the world did we ever do without Twitter? What did we do without Facebook? How did we manage to win World War II? How did we manage to do it without the tech giants? And so now, if the tech giants, if they piss me off, I get off. I don't tweet. I stay off tweet. I stay off Twitter. I stay off Facebook. I stay off of all of these social media outlets. And so there you go. And find another way. And that's the other thing with technology. There's always something new coming along. There's already a place on the web where you can have, as it was described earlier in the article, you can set up your own website. You can have your own content. And nobody can take it away from you. It belongs to you. And it's something to do with blockchaining and that kind of thing. I don't understand all the details of it, but the point is there's a place, there's a refuge. Same thing with Donald Trump. It isn't just that he was banned, but he went and found a home in, I don't know if is he on Parler or not, but a lot of the people that got kicked off of Twitter simply went to another place, Parler. So then Amazon said, you can't be on our platform. Fine. Parler got their own platform, which is what they should have done to begin with. And so there you go. But again, it's all the left pushing this. We're worried about what's happening to people and what information they get. Don't worry about it. It's none of your business. Mind your own damn business. So that's all of the article. I'm going to go ahead and read. Who is in control of the need to rein in big tech? And that's exactly wrong. We don't need to rein them in. That's what started the whole problem, was trying to rein in big tech. The problem, as the Congress saw it, was that big tech was not censoring content. And so then when Congress encouraged them to censor content, then they became easily manipulated. Because they always talk about big tech manipulating people, but who's manipulating big tech? And it comes right back to Congress. It comes back to the people in political power, people with money. I'm sure George Soros and his organization or organizations are involved in this, and probably all kinds of other left-wing organizations, the Southern Poverty Law Center, whatever the hell that's called, and others. People that are pro, maybe even Planned Parenthood, getting involved, because if they can help control speech, then you're going to have less of a hue and cry about getting rid of abortions. But again, we don't need to rein in. If what he's saying here, the need to rein in big tech, and he's obviously talking about government doing that. If the people in the United States want to rein in big tech, they simply just get off. Close your Twitter accounts, close everything up, and go do something else. That's the best way to shut them down. They make their money through advertising. If nobody's watching their advertising, then then they go out of business. Just that simple. So let the market, so to speak, respond. And so this is another reason I don't like this article, is because this is a guy that's pretending to be a free market capitalist, whose article is advocating anything but free market capitalism. He is advocating getting the government involved to restrain free speech, to throttle the market. And so, again, big tech is caught in the middle. They're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. Back in a minute. Thank you very much. That brings me to the conclusion of another episode of The Drill. And until next time, be honest, be smart, be beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power. They can't win. And remember to buy a copy of my book. It's on Kindle. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. And you can also, it's part of the sharing program. So if you buy a copy of the book, you can share it with your friends. And it's called The Drill. It's the companion book to this podcast. It is a first edition. So right now I'm currently working on the second edition. And so I'll be updating it and making it better and better as I go along. That's the way I plan it. Second edition, third edition, et cetera, et cetera. So buy the book. The Drill, $2.99 on Kindle. It's only available in ebook form. And other than that, again, have a memorable Memorial Day.